David was always known in his neighborhood for his morning jogs with Rocky, his faithful German shepherd. Every day at sunrise, they would run together, David's laughter mixing with Rocky's excited barks. But that was before the accident. Now, David lay still in the hospital bed, unresponsive for 2 weeks after a severe car crash. The machines around him beeped steadily, their rhythmic sounds the only indication of life in the quiet room. The doctors had done everything they could, but David showed no signs of waking up from his coma. Linda, David's wife, sat by his bedside every day, holding his hand and talking to him about home, about Rocky, about everything and nothing. Rocky waited at home, refusing to eat properly, spending hours by the front door, waiting for his beloved owner to return. "We need to discuss options," Dr. Thompson said gently to Linda one morning. "It's been 2 weeks, and there's very little brain activity. We might need to consider." He couldn't finish the sentence, but Linda understood. The time was coming to make an impossible decision. That's when Linda remembered how Rocky always seemed to know when David wasn't feeling well. Even before David himself realized he was getting sick, Rocky would become extra attentive, refusing to leave his side. Could I bring our dog to see him?" Linda asked the doctor. "Just one last time." Dr. Thompson hesitated but saw the plea in Linda's eyes. He made an exception to the hospital's strict no pets policy. "Just this once," he said. "To say goodbye." The next morning, Linda brought Rocky to the hospital. The usually energetic dog was unusually calm as they walked through the corridors. When they entered David's room, Rocky's ears perked up. He recognized his human scent, but something was wrong. Slowly, cautiously, Rocky approached the bed. He sniffed David's hand, the one hanging slightly off the side. The dog's tail, usually wagging with endless enthusiasm, was still. He looked at Linda, then back at David, confusion clear in his brown eyes. "It's okay, boy," Linda whispered, fighting back tears. "You can say goodbye." But Rocky had other plans. Instead of saying goodbye, he gently placed his head on David's chest, just like he did every morning when waking him up for their run. The dog's eyes remained fixed on David's face, waiting, hoping. Minutes passed. The nurses came to suggest it was time to leave, but Rocky wouldn't budge. He stayed there, his head on David's chest, occasionally whimpering softly. Then, something extraordinary happened. David's fingers twitched. At first, it was so slight that Linda thought she imagined it. But Rocky noticed too. His ears perked up and his tail began to move. He lifted his head and let out a single sharp bark. "Quiet, Rocky," Linda whispered, but the dog barked again, more urgently this time. He nudged David's hand with his nose, tail now wagging with purpose. The monitors started showing changes. David's heart rate increased slightly. His breathing pattern shifted. The doctors rushed in, amazed at the sudden signs of responsiveness. And then, like a miracle unfolding in slow motion, David's eyes began to flutter. Rocky's tail was now wagging furiously, his whole body trembling with excitement. When David's eyes finally opened, they first focused on his faithful companion. "Hey, buddy," David whispered, his voice hoarse from disuse. Rocky responded by gently licking his face, while Linda burst into tears of joy. The doctors called it a medical mystery. They couldn't explain how David had suddenly awakened when all signs had pointed to a different outcome. But Linda knew. Rocky hadn't come to say goodbye. He had come to bring his best friend back home. Today, David and Rocky still take their morning runs together. Sometimes they go a bit slower and they don't go as far, but they're together. And every morning, Rocky still wakes David up by placing his head on his chest, as if to make sure his human is still there, still with him. This story reminds us that the bond between humans and their dogs goes beyond what science can explain. Sometimes, when all hope seems lost, it's the pure, unconditional love of a dog that can work miracles. Remember, dogs aren't just pets. They're family members who can sense things we can't, feel things we don't understand, and sometimes, just sometimes, they can bring us back from the brink with nothing but their presence and their love.